Hey everybody, a lot to cover. This is part 2 in close-up photography in black and white outdoors. And if you missed the last week's video, I'll put a link in the show notes so you can watch that first before you get into part number 2 here. Are we ready for this? Let's do it. Everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to photography and as a photo artist thinking creatively out of the box. Okay, this is going to be part 2 from last week. And if you missed, again, last week's, it'll be in the show notes for you guys. And if I remember, I'll put a link over here somewhere at the end of the video that you can click on to watch last week's video. Okay, first of all, before I get into this, what we're going to cover today, I'd like to thank everybody that's been contributing to the channel. This is always on a volunteer basis. I don't do subscription-based. And that is going to buymeacoffee.com/Steven Photo Artist. You'll see the link here at the bottom of the screen. It will also be in the show notes. I really, really appreciate you guys helping support the channel. It keeps me motivated, and let's jump into today's program, covering 3 things. Now, number 1 is why did I choose to shoot JPEG in color, knowing that I really want this in black and white? Number 2 is I'm going to take one of the images that I shot out at the orchards there and do it 2 different ways. One is 100% in Photoshop, and the other one is Photoshop along with a plugin. The reason I'm doing both is that you may not want to use a plugin or don't own a plugin like I have that I've shown numerous times. So I think it's important that I give you the option of going, both different ways. And then the very last thing is, what in the heck did I learn with this experience? Because this is not what I do. I don't do close-up photography. It's a category that I was curious about, but pretty much my career, I was making money and shooting people. And that could be kids, it could be high school seniors, weddings, that kind of stuff. So this is out of my comfort zone. I'm going to talk about pros and cons, what I liked, what I was challenged with, because again, this is my first time really focusing on doing these techniques in photography. All right, so with that out of the way, let's start with the first thing, and that is why did I shoot JPEG in color knowing I wanted to be in black and white? Let's get started. Everybody, before I get into actually editing an image and show you my approach, and I'll do it a couple different ways, I want to talk about why I was shooting JPEG and why I was shooting in color, and yet I want my images to be black and white. How come I didn't shoot it in black and white? So before I get into that, just some people know this, some don't, but on cameras, if you go to your menu system, some will call it monochrome, some will call it black and white. Canon cameras typically will call it monochrome, and you can actually set this to shoot in black and white, and it's forced to be saved as a JPEG if you're shooting as a JPEG format. If you're doing it in RAW, all the color information is still there. You can shoot it in black and white and see the black and white in the back of your camera, but when you open it up, that color information is still there that you could bring it back. Well, why did I not shoot in RAW? Why am I shooting JPEG? Well, number 1, I'm trying to keep this very simple and basic, and shooting in JPEG tends to slow you down. You think properly, like, I got to make sure that I got good exposure with my camera, and I'm using a fast enough shutter speed so nothing is blurred when I'm taking that. So it's just psychologically, it just helps me along with other people to slow down when you're shooting. But I want to keep this very basic and simple. Some people want to shoot with a cell phone and they want to save it as a JPEG. But if I'm doing JPEG, why not save it in black and white? And here's why. I've got 2 images opened up here. So let's look at Photoshop. And you'll see that this one is in color. So imagine me out there, again, shooting in color versus, oh, there's a JPEG and it's in black and white already. Here's the problem. If I go over here in layers and I decide to open up something called like black and white, and I move these sliders around, nothing's really happening to the tonal range and stuff. I'd have to do another technique. I can do contrast. I can get into curves and do things where I can lighten up the image and making it darker, that kind of stuff. But I'm really out of control of modifying the different tones and shades in the image. If I had shot that as a colored JPEG file and do the same thing. So I'm going to go over here again to the Oreo cookie dip in milk, and we're going to choose black and white. Now with this open up, wherever it sees red, you can see what's happening. There's red in the woods and that, but I'm moving the reds around. How about the yellows? See how I can control the tonal range I want to work with. I don't remember if there's any greens. There's blue, there's cyan, there's blue there. So notice how I can control different areas based on colors. And it just gives me more creativity when I'm working in black and white if I shoot this in color first. So that's why I chose to shoot in color. It's the interpretation when I'm going to black and white. And let's take a look at one of the images and how I edit it in Photoshop. Are we ready? Let's do it. Okay, as I said earlier, that I'm going to do a couple different methods for you. One is going to be using a plugin, and the other is not using a plugin. It's going to be 100% Photoshop. So let's open up one of the images I shot at the orchard out there. Go to the open dialog box, and we'll just pick this image. So if you remember this image from the first video, this is one of the, I think it's one of the first ones I sort of framed. It could have been the second shot. I can't remember. Anyhow, I'm going to do Control-J, Command-J on a Mac to duplicate it just so I can do a quick before and after for you. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by going to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk, and I'm going to choose black and white. And again, this is a non-destructive method of turning a color image into a black and white, and it gives me control. We saw that in the video I just finished, and that is the reds. There's a lot of reds in here. I can make this darker. I could push this and make that really light. So I'm going to push this down a little bit. Again, everything I'm doing here is personal taste. It's not right or wrong. I'm going to grab the yellows. I think we got a lot of yellows in there, so I can lighten that up a little bit. I don't think there's any greens at all. Cyan, I don't see anything going on there, or the blues, not really. And even magenta, there's a little bit of magenta, but you know what? I'm going to leave that alone right there. So there's my first, just converting. Now I want to go past this a little bit. So I want this to be a little bit more contrasty. I want some grain in this, maybe vignette or something, but and maybe put a border on this. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open this up in a plugin. So I need a visible stamp layer. Some people call this the move, and that is Shift Control Alt E like in Edward does a visible stamp layer for me at the very top, as long as I'm on the top of the stack. It's taking everything visually that it sees and creates that layer for me. If you're on a Mac, it's Shift Command Option E like in Edward to get the same results. Now that I have that set, I'm going to go to my filter dropdown and use a plugin I've used many times, Boris FX Optics. And again, for people that are new, again, I have no affiliation with Optics, even though, yes, I was a beta tester for them in the earlier days before they came out to market. In exchange, because I wasn't getting paid to do this, I got the software, the finished version of the software, at a huge, huge discount. I'm not even going to tell you, but it was like ridiculous. It's like you'd be stupid to say no on that. But anyhow, so this opens up, and this is not a training class on this, but they have all these different categories down here, and one of them is called Film Labs, and within Film Labs there is Film Stocks. I'm going to choose Film Stocks, and then you got all these different ones to choose from here. As I click on them, you can see how it changes, and no right or wrong. Oh, I sort of like this one. There's a bit of a vignette already built into that, so I'm going to choose that one right there. And again, personal taste on this. Now that I've chosen that, I'm not going to export it out, because what I'd like to do, I'm going to zoom in on this a bit, and I'm going to come over here to something called parameters, and I'm going to slide down here because I know somewhere in there there's something called grain, and I want to push up. Now, I'm going to over-exaggerate this so we can see this on the YouTube video, but you can see that that's way too much, but I just want you to see that I can control the grain in the parameters of this program based on the preset that I chose. So I'm going to back off on that a little bit right there. I'm thinking that looks pretty good. I'm just going to choose, let's fit that back on the screen. Okay, now the next thing I like to do is like to finish this off, and I'm going to be doing this for my book, by the way, and I'm going to come down here to a little search category, which opens up at the very top over here. And I'm going to type in, because I can never remember, border, and then enter on the keyboard. And this opens up, look on the left side here, different styles of borders to choose from. Now, some have a black outline versus a white outline. So the book I'm going to do is going to be with white pages. So I'm always going to choose something that has white around it, not the black. And it's, again, personal choice. So I just, you go through here and pick out what you like. All these different variations. That's pretty cool. So I think I'm going to choose that one right there. And then when I'm done, I just come down to the lower right corner of the software and just choose apply. And that will drop right into Photoshop. And then there's my finished product right there. Okay, now let's do this a different way. Hey, Steve, that's great that you've got, Boris FX Optics there, but I don't own it. I don't really feel like spending the money to buy something like that. Okay, that's fine. So how can I do this 100% in Photoshop? Well, there's all different variations that we could do. So let's get, I'm not going to get rid of this. I think what I'm going to do is go to Image, just to get a jump start here. And I'm going to choose Duplicate. So what it's going to do is I'm going to just click on OK. So it gives me a duplicate there. So you can see that's what I just did. And this is the duplicate copy. And the reason is that I'm going to take that layer and I'm just going to delete that. Because I can do what I just shared with you now 100% in Photoshop by, again, adding the black and white layer like I did before. So I just duplicated this so we have a before and after comparison. Now, since I'm not using a plugin, what are my options? What can I do? Well, there's virtually unlimited options that you could do here. So it doesn't mean this is the only way of doing anything, but I'm going to go over here to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk again, and I'm just going to choose brightness and contrast. And I'm thinking of adding a little bit more brightness to this, but I'm going to push my contrast up. Maybe the brightness is too much. I'll pull that down. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull that down, but my contrast is up. So this is the before and after. Hopefully that shows up. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is add some grain to this, and there's different ways of doing this. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to go to Layer drop-down menu here, choose New Layer. I want to purposely get the New Layer dialog box. So when I come over here, I can choose a blending mode of overlay, which activates this bottom area. And I'm going to activate this, and it says Fill with Overlay Neutral Color 50% gray. Well, what does that mean? If you haven't been following me in the past, it means that this layer right here, which is a 50% neutral gray with, it could be soft light or overlay, it doesn't matter. It's like this layer doesn't exist. Watch what the image looks like when I turn this on and off. It's on right now, it's off. It's on, it's off. You don't see anything. There's no difference. That's what I need for my setup, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Filter drop-down menu here, and I'm going to choose Noise, and I'm going to choose Add Noise. Now, when this opens up, let me move this to the side a bit. And now I should have zoomed in first, but there is a Gaussian that you could choose or uniform. And that's just personal preference on this. The amount, hopefully this shows up. It may not show up too well, but let's see if I guess I can't zoom in on that. Sorry about that, because I already pulled up the dialog box. But you know what? We need to see it. So I'm closing out of that. Sorry about that. Let me zoom in on this really big so we can see this. Now let's go over again to filter. Let's go down to noise and add, noise and add noise. So now we can see it. So there's a before, after, and you can get as aggressive if you want as you want by pushing up the amount, pushing that back a little bit, again, and then choosing uniform versus Gaussian. Totally up to you. I'll leave it on Gaussian, and we'll make it like that. So there we go. Before, after. Hopefully that shows up. If you feel it's too much, we have opacity. You could scrub that down a bit. So hopefully you could see the grain. So that's just a method of using Photoshop to add grain. Well, what if I want to do it a different way? Well, let me close out of that right here. I'm going to hide that layer for right now. And I'm going to go to my open dialog box, and I have this. You can find these on the internet. Some you have to buy good quality ones. And this is just what they call a grain overlay. And I'm going to take this on this layer, click and drag it to this image, drop it in there, Control T. If you've been following me, you know this. If you haven't been following me, let me just make sure I resize that. You may not know that when you have an overlay and there's black in that overlay, the black goes away when you go to a screen blending mode in layers. So I'm going to choose, again, screen. And again, let's zoom in on this a bit. And we can see, and you can mask out certain things, but this is just a different way of adding grain to an image. Now, again, I'm going to hide that, and let's do this again. And that is, again, because these are all choices, there's nothing right or wrong. I'm going to choose this color texture. And again, this little overlay, I'm going to put it in this project, this image, Control T, Command T on a Mac. I want to resize this, and I'm holding the Shift key down, grabbing the corner here. So with the Shift, it allows me to resize that, let that snap in. Enter on the keyboard. Now, what I'd like to do is this is going to be black and white, and I don't want color blended into that. So Shift Control U, that'd be Shift Command U on a Mac to quickly convert that to a grayscale. Boy, I think it's under Layer, Image, Adjustment. There we go, Desaturate. Okay, the reason I forget half the time where these things are at, because I know so many shortcut keystrokes, it's working faster in Photoshop. And I always forget when somebody says, hey, where's that in the drop-down menu? I go, boy, I can't remember. So anyhow, with that selected, I'm going to go to something like overlay, or it could be soft light. Soft light's a little less intense. Overlay's a little bit stronger. And again, you could change the opacity of this. In fact, you know what? Let's zoom in on this a bit so you can see this. What if I reactivate those other two layers? Man, we're living on the edge now. We got a lot of stuff going on here, okay? So again, all personal preference. I'm just trying to give you some ideas on how you might want to, convert and do some very unique things in black and white in Photoshop, especially if you want to get that gritty, grungy type look, sort of an old style analog look. All right, now, how do I put a border on this? Well, one of my favorite ways, and by the way, to do this, I'm going to need everything consolidated on a single layer here to do this. So here goes the move. Remember that? Shift Control Alt E, or if you're on a Mac, Shift Command Option E to give me a visible stamp layer at the very top there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my open dialog box. I'm going to choose this clipping layer. I've got an entire collection of these. Some I purchased, some I actually created. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it over to the image again. Control T, Command T. I need to make this fit perfect in that area. So again, let me grab the corner node, holding the Shift key down. Let's make sure that fits in there. Okay, so why is this called a clipping layer? And that is, I need to clip this, but not this. What I need to do is come to this image here, my project image, and move that above. And now if I right mouse click here, and there are shortcut techniques and stuff like that, create a clipping mask. It's clipping into this layer below, but hey, wait a minute. I don't see any difference. What's going on? Well, because of all these other layers are active below it. Now I can turn those layers off. In fact, let me do that. I'm just going to come down here. Just get rid of these layers. So now we see, oh, okay. But if we take a look at this really close, I see a checkerboard pattern, which means that is transparent. Okay, if I take this and move it into a project, I'd have to save it as a PNG, which is a smaller, say, range of information. So what I'm going to do here is simple. I'm going to click right below the clipping layer here. I'm going to go to the Oreo cookie dipped in milk, and I'm going to just choose a solid color. And the color I choose is going to be white. And there you go. So there is my border. So I can turn that on and off. I don't know if this is going to work, but turn that on. This is what I started with. And that's what I ended up with. So that's a different way of creating a border. By the way, if you're learning anything, if you could do me a favor before I get into my last session here, and that is please like the video, subscribe if you have not subscribed, hit the notification bell next time I upload a video, which is at least once a week. Sometimes I sneak in an extra one here and there, but I do one at least once a week. Okay, now with that out of the way, hope you learned something. Let's talk about what did I learn by going out and doing something out of my comfort zone. So let's talk about that next. Okay, so let's talk about what in the heck did I learn? And the answer is absolutely nothing. Okay, come on, I'm kidding. I'm being sarcastic. Life's too short. You got to have fun, people. All right, so what did I learn? Well, first of all, going to a place early in the morning before they were open up to the public, and there were a lot of workers there, I should have really approached them and said, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going to be doing this, just to let you know what I was doing. Because what happened was when I started photographing and walking around, they were curious as to what the heck is this guy doing? And they came up to me and said, could we ask you, what are you doing? Because here I am coming in close, on cameras, taking pictures of objects and tractors and parts of tractors and their equipment. And they were suspicious about things. After I showed them what I was doing and telling them, here's what I'm planning on doing for our YouTube channel, they got all excited. And they actually came up to me later, and the guy came up on those 4-wheel ATVs and says, hey, I could drive you to the far end of the property if you want. There's some really cool stuff out there you might want to take a look at. Really? Okay. So the point is really nice, but I think it would have been better if I would have introduced myself in the beginning rather than them getting suspicious as to, hey, what in the heck is this guy doing? But let's talk about my experience with actually shooting. I'm going to tell you the biggest challenge I had. By the way, I forgot to mention my camera settings, I believe. It was 800 ISO. I did not want to worry about my shutter speed, even though it was light outside. So I was shooting at 5.6 and at aperture priority. And that way I was just focusing on my project, what I was going to take a photo of. But the hardest thing I had, difficult doing, and it took a while. By the end of the day, when I was done shooting, I was feeling a little bit more comfort in it. But that is shooting at a 1:1 aspect ratio. I was so used to shooting horizontal or vertical, framing my shot by focusing and maybe reframing that. Man, when you're just in a 1:1 aspect ratio, for me anyhow, personally, it was a bit challenging. And of course, I'm shooting close-up photography, not macro, even though my point and shoot, and a lot of cameras, by the way, the camera I'm using, the G1X Mark III, it's going on 8 years old. It's a high-end point and shoot. I mean, it shoots 24 meg, RAW versus JPEG and that. But the point is there's a setting in there called macro. I didn't want to use that because I know a lot of people might be using maybe a crop sensor, mirrorless camera or full frame camera with interchangeable lenses. And usually the cameras that have interchangeable lenses don't have a macro feature in the camera. And the reason is they want you to go out and buy a macro lens, So you're, in say a normal mode in my camera, I can only go so far in close to focus. So that was a little bit of challenging is, when I'm zooming in and moving back and forth to try to get things in focus, I was getting a feel for that. But later in the day, I was moving faster with it. I wasn't cropping. When I'm looking at the images I'm going to work on, I think only a handful of them I'm going to crop in a little bit because there's something distracting on the side. But, that's minor stuff. But I'm not doing one of these things where I'm going to, really crop in 20, 30, 40% really close up. No, I'm not going to do that because all of a sudden now it's starting to become, oh, you're shooting macro because you're in closer than, say, close-up photography. So that was the hardest thing for me, was just framing my shot as an aspect ratio. And, of course, anything you do out of your comfort zone, it just doesn't feel right until you do it over and over. In fact, I can hear my mentor say Peter Colson and my number one person, Joel Grimes, saying, you need to go out and do hundreds of these, you just keep repeating over and over and over, and you just get better with it. So anyhow, so that is, I learned a lot. It felt great to do something different for a change. I'm looking forward to doing other things. And let's see, I think that's about it. So I'm going to end this by saying, I'm encouraging you to go out and do something out of your comfort zone. So if you've never done, say, street photography, if you have the chance to do it, focus on doing it and learn from your experience. You might do still life photography. If you're not a landscape photographer like me, I think eventually I'm going to try landscape photography to get more serious with it, because I've done stuff before, but it's not like I really was studying and trying to get some training on things. So I'm trying to encourage you to go have fun, make mistakes, because that's how we learn, right? Okay, people. So till next time, see ya.